Located in the Albertine Rift, Lake Kivu is one of the African Great Lakes, a natural border between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. Surrounded by green majestic mountains and volcanoes that harbor a rich variety of fauna and flora, Kivu is among the 10 largest lakes in Africa, and it's also one of the deepest in the world. The lake empties into the Ruzizi River, which flows into Lake Tanganyika. A significant part, 700 square kilometers, of its watershed is located between the lake and the volcanoes and is not drained by any rivers. The remaining 4,400 square kilometers is drained by more than 100 small rivers. More than 2 million people live in its basin, and for many of them Lake Kivu is an important source of income, mainly from fisheries, transport, and tourism. As one of Africa's exploding lakes, it has intrigued scientists for decades. The interaction of lake water with volcanic hot springs produces large amounts of carbon dioxide, CO2, and methane, CH4, that is currently being extracted as an energy source. Lake Kivu, one of the Great Lakes of East Africa, situated between Congo, Kinshasa, to the west and Rwanda to the east. Lying at 4,790 feet, 1,460 meters, above sea level, it occupies 1,040 square miles, 2,700 square km, and is 55 miles, 90 kilometers, long, north-south, and 30 miles, 50 kilometers, wide, east-west. From an average depth of 722 feet, 220 meters, it plunges to a maximum of 1,558 feet, 475 meters. Lake Kivu has a rough, jagged coast and contains numerous islands, the largest of which is Ijwi. It was at one time part of a larger body of water that filled a structural trough in the earth. Volcanic outpourings along its northern shore created a dam that separated Kivu from Lake Edward, Lake Idi Amin Dada, barred Kivu's northern outflow, and reversed its drainage to the south through the Ruzizi River into Lake Tanganyika. The Mururu hydroelectric dam was completed at the Ruzizi River's outlet in 1958. Kivu's shores are densely populated, the principal towns being Bukavu and Goma in Congo and Kisangani, in Rwanda. The first European to visit the lake was the German explorer Count Adolf von Gotzen in 1894. Although it is supplied with fish, the lake is poor in fauna but rich in volcanic substance. Great volumes of dissolved methane gases that may be developed as energy sources exist in its deep waters. Lake Kivu lies on the border between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda, and is in the Albertine Rift, the western branch of the East African Rift. Lake Kivu empties into the Ruzizi River, which flows southwards into Lake Tanganyika. In 1894, German explorer and officer Gustav Adolf von Gotzen was the first European to discover the lake. In the past, Lake Kivu drained toward the north, contributing to the White Nile. About 13,000 to 9,000 years ago, volcanic activity blocked Lake Kivu's outlet to the watershed of the Nile. The volcanism produced mountains, including the Virungas, which rose between Lake Kivu and Lake Edward, to the north. Water from Lake Kivu was then forced south down the Ruzizi. This, in turn, raised the level of Lake Tanganyika, which overflowed down the Lukuga River. Lake Kivu is one of 3 lakes in the world, along with Lake Nyos and Lake Manaun, that undergo limnic eruptions, where overturn of deep water stratified layers releases dissolved carbon dioxide, CO2. The lake's bottom also contains methane, CH4, meaning if a limnic eruption occurs, the lives of the 2 million people living nearby would be in danger. Lake Kivu is approximately 42 kilometers 26 miles long and 50 kilometers 31 miles at its widest. Its irregular shape makes measuring its precise surface area difficult. It has been estimated to cover a total surface area of some 2,700 square kilometers 1,040 square miles, making it Africa's 8th largest lake. The surface of the lake sits at a height of 1,460 meters, 4,790 feet, above sea level. This lake has a chance of suffering a limnic eruption every 1,000 years. The lake has a maximum depth of 475 meters 1,558 feet and a mean depth of 220 meters 722 feet, making it the world's 20th deepest lake by maximum depth, and the 13th deepest by mean depth. Some 1,370 square kilometers, 529 square miles, or 58% of the lake's waters lie within DRC borders. The lake bed sits upon a rift valley that is slowly being pulled apart, causing volcanic activity in the area. The world's 10th largest island in a lake, Ijwi, lies in Lake Kivu. Settlements on the lake's shore include Bukavu, Kabare, Kalehe, Sake, and Goma in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Gisenyi, Kibai, and Cyangugu in Rwanda. Chemistry. Lake Kivu is a freshwater lake and, along with Cameroonian Lake Nyos and Lake Manaun, is one of three that are known to undergo limnic eruptions, where overturn of deep water stratified layers releases dissolved carbon dioxide. Around the lake, geologists found evidence of massive local extinctions about every 1,000 years, presumably caused by outgassing events. The trigger for lake overturns in Lake Kivu is unknown, but volcanic activity and changes in climate are both suspected. The gaseous chemical composition of exploding lakes is unique to each lake. In Lake Kivu's case, it includes methane, CH4, and carbon dioxide, CO2, as a result of lake water interaction with volcanic hot springs. The amount of methane contained at the bottom of the lake is estimated to be 65 cubic kilometers, 16 cu-mi. If burned in a modern combined cycle generating plant, that amount of methane would generate around 40,000 megawatts for an entire year, which is equivalent to the power output of 6 Grand Coulee dams operating at peak springtime power. The lake also holds an estimated 256 cubic kilometers, 61 cu-mi, of carbon dioxide which, if released in an eruption event, could suffocate all of the inhabitants of the lake shore. The water temperature is 24 degrees Celsius 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and the pH is about 8.6. The methane is reported to be produced by microbial reduction of the volcanic CO2. A future overturn and gas release from the deep waters of Lake Kivu would result in catastrophe, dwarfing the historically documented lake overturns at the much smaller lakes Nyos and Manaun. The lives of the approximately 2 million people who live in the lake basin area would be threatened. Cores from the Bukavu Bay area of the lake reveal that the bottom has layered deposits of the rare mineral monohydrocalcite interlaid with diatoms, on top of sapropelic sediments with high pyrite content. These are found at 3 different intervals. The sapropelic layers are believed to be related to hydrothermal discharge and the diatoms to a bloom which reduced the carbon dioxide levels low enough to precipitate monohydrocalcite. Scientists hypothesis that sufficient volcanic interaction with the lake's bottom water that has high gas concentrations would heat water, force the methane out of the water, spark a methane explosion, and trigger a nearly simultaneous release of carbon dioxide, though the entry of 1 million cubic meters of lava during the January 2002 eruption had no effect. The carbon dioxide would then suffocate large numbers of people in the lake basin as the gases roll off the lake surface. It is also possible that the lake could spawn lake tsunamis as gas explodes out of it. The risk posed by Lake Kivu began to be understood during the analysis of more recent events at Lake Nyos. Lake Kivu's methane was originally thought to be merely a cheap natural resource for export, and for the generation of cheap power. Once the mechanisms that caused lake overturns began to be understood, so did awareness of the risk the lake posed to the local population. An experimental vent pipe was installed at Lake Nyos in 2001 to remove gas from the deep water, but such a solution for the much larger Lake Kivu would be considerably more expensive. The approximately 510 million metric tons, 500 times 106 long tons, of carbon dioxide in the lake is a little under 2% of the amount released annually by human fossil fuel burning. Therefore, the process of releasing it could potentially have costs beyond simply building and operating the system. This problem associated with the prevalence of methane is that of Mazuku, the Swahili term evil wind for the outgassing of methane and carbon dioxide that kills people and animals, and can even kill vegetation when in high enough concentration. Methane extraction. Lake Kivu has recently been found to contain approximately 55 billion cubic meters, 1.9 trillion cu-foot, of dissolved biogas at a depth of 300 meters, 1,000 feet. Until 2004, extraction of the gas was done on a small scale, with the extracted gas being used to run boilers at the Brollerway Brewery in Gisenyi. As far as large-scale exploitation of this resource is concerned, the Rwandan government has negotiated with a number of parties to produce methane from the lake. In 2011, Contour Global, a UK-based energy company focused on emerging markets, secured project financing to initiate a large-scale methane extraction project. The project is run through a local Rwandan entity called Kivu Watt, using an offshore barge platform to extract, separate, and clean the gases obtained from the lake bed before pumping purified methane via an underwater pipeline to onshore gas engines. Stage 1 of the project, powering 3 gensets along the lakeshore and supplying 26 MW of electricity to the local grid, has since been completed. The next phase aims to deploy 9 additional gensets at 75 MW to create a total capacity of 101 MW. In addition, Symbian Power Lake Kivu Limited was awarded a concession and power producing agreement, PPA, in 2015, to produce 50 MW of power using Lake Kivu methane. The project is expected to commence construction in 2019, with first power, phase 1 to 14 MW, to be produced in first quarter 2020. The plant will be fully operational in 2021. Symbian Power has purchased another concession for a further 25 MW and are currently negotiating a PPA with the Rwanda Electricity Group, which may see 8 MW of power dispatched to the grid 6 months after the PPA has been signed. This concession is on the site of the original pilot plant known as KP1. In addition to managing gas extraction, Kivu Watt will also manage the electrical generation plants and on-sell the electrical power to the Rwandan government under the terms of a long-term power purchase agreement, PPA. This allows Kivu Watt to control a vertically integrated energy offering from point of extraction to point of sale into the local grid. Extraction is said to be cost-effective and relatively simple because once the gas-rich water is pumped up, the dissolved gases, primarily carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, and methane, begin to bubble out as the water pressure gets lower. This project is expected to increase Rwanda's energy generation capability by as much as 20 times, and will enable Rwanda to sell electricity to neighboring African countries. The firm was awarded the 2011 Africa Power Deal of the Year for innovation in the financing arrangements it obtained from various sources for the Kivu Watt project. The $200 million power plant was operating at 26 MW in 2016. The fish fauna in Lake Kivu is relatively poor with 28 described species, including 4 introduced species. In 2018, over 400 cases of potential illegal fishing were recorded on Lake Kivu. According to the Animal Research and Technology Transfer at the Rwanda Agricultural Board, fish production in Kivu Lake dropped from 2,499 tons in the 2017 to 2018 fishing season to 1,694 tons in 2019 to 2020, which Deputy Director Solange Yowituz attributed to fishing methods that affect fish reproduction. Between May and July 2020, Rwanda Police Marine Unit operations reported 27 cases including 10 arrested poachers for illegal fishing on the lake. Thank you for watching this video.